with my video freezing and buffering and trying to start. So I'm back at it again. Hopefully it will work this time. I see that YouTube is not, it says YouTube is now started. So let's wait a little longer, wait for people to arrive to the scene. There was a lot of issues when I was live just now, earlier. I don't know what's going on. It seems like every time I try to cover something that no one else is covering, or I try to cover life and death things, all of a sudden the stream starts buffering and freezing and all these things. So hopefully this is a little bit better this time around. So press the share button. Let's get the audience back. I think we had 75, 80 people live. So let's get going. Share this video. I was trying to report on basically the East Chicago, Indiana lead crisis, now moving to another part of Indiana. They're moving the waste from that lead contaminated zone to another town in Indiana. Unfortunately, the stream was buffering nonstop, so I'll probably do that over tomorrow or another day this week so you could get the information. But boy, do I got quite a lot to get to this time around. The stream seems to be working, so we'll see how long it works before there's more fuckery. So, as always, and reporting, growing a new media company. If you haven't been following, we're trying to launch our media network as soon as possible. That network will feature myself and other reporters, and that network will be called Status Coup, because it's time for a coup d'etat of the status quo, and that is a journalistic coup d'etat, of course, not a armed coup d'etat. Keep your weapons at home. We don't want that. But we need to get this up. Right now, we're almost at 2,000 a month. I have 343 patrons. We got to get that up closer to 500, 1,000. So your contributions are appreciated. As a patron, you will get my podcast. You will get video diaries. And once a month, I'm talking live with patrons, video chats. We're going to be adding other things to the Patreon as we go. So thanks so much for your contributions. Now, let's talk mainstream media smearing progressive media, because it's always interesting to me. There's always the, kind of like the subtle smearing by establishment media of more independent anti-war media. When I was on the road covering the campaign for the Young Turks, I was always kind of looked at as kind of like, oh, one of those from the Young Turks, one of those, other media people, or like, oh, one of those like activists pretending to be a journalist, because the CNN and MSNBC and New York Times reporters and all these people that are on the road covering campaigns or whatever they're covering, by default, they're kind of arrogant, and they look down at people like me, or people like Jimmy Dore, or people like Kyle Kalinske, or people like Jamarl Thomas, or people like Lee Camp. But now it's gone beyond that. Now they are basically trying to issue propaganda and smear people that are independent commentators or independent journalists. Essentially, they're smearing those people who are basically asking very valid questions and pointing out very valid concerns about issues like war. So let's see, CNN wrote a piece. Again, I was away over the weekend, so I didn't get to. YouTube ran ads from hundreds of brands on extremist channels. And basically, YouTube wrote ads from over 300 companies and organizations, including tech giants, major retailers, newspapers, and government agency, ran on YouTube channels promoting white nationalists, Nazis, pedophilia, conspiracy theories, and North Korean propaganda, a CNN investigation has found. And, they listed the companies like Adidas, Amazon, Cisco, Facebook, Hershey, Hilton, LinkedIn, Mozilla, Netflix, and a couple others. And, basically they are citing that these companies, without knowing it, ran ads on, let's look at some of the shows they cite. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, one second. So you have friends. Okay. So Nissan, for example, said, "We are shocked Nissan advertising has been served next to inappropriate and disturbing content by one of our partners. We employ safeguards to keep digital advertising from appearing next to offensive content and have agreements in place with our partners to strictly adhere to our brand safety guidelines." Okay, so where are they talking about? So they're talking about the center advertisements potentially funded by U.S. tax dollars also appeared on the channels promoting North Korean propaganda. The Centers for Disease Control, Department of Transportation, Customs and Border Protection, Veteran Affairs, and the U.S. Coast Guard Academy had ads on the channels as well. So, meanwhile, ads from the Washington Post and New York Times appeared on far-right and conspiracy channels like Black Pigeon Speaks, and some run by InfoWars, which is obviously Alex Jones's company. Okay, well, they also decided to add in Jimmy Dore with the white nationalists and the Nazis and all these smears. What do they call it? White nationalists, Nazis, pedophilia, and conspiracy theories. So which one did CNN call Jimmy Dore? Was it the Nazis? Was it the pedophilia? Was it the conspiracy theories? Or North Korean propaganda? Well, this is what CNN said about Jimmy. Ads also appeared on the Jimmy Dore show channel, a far left. Oh my God, it sounds like Bill O'Reilly's talking. You remember when Bill O'Reilly, if you played the drinking game watching Bill O'Reilly on Fox, far left, you'd be dead. He said it 100 million times in 1 hour. Jimmy Dore. Ads also appeared on the Jimmy Dore show channel, a far left YouTube channel that peddles conspiracy theories, such as the idea that Syria chemical weapon attacks are hoaxes. So they're basically saying that suggesting that the Syria chemical weapons attack are hoaxes is somehow a conspiracy theory, or somehow makes you akin to white nationalists, or I don't know, white nationalists, Nazis, this and this. So Jimmy out facts, the fact that America started bombing Syria before there was even an investigation into whether there was indeed was chemical weapons used in Doma, because there were accounts from doctors and others on the ground that there were not chemical weapons used, and people were suffering from asthma attacks and other things, and that the first person to yell out chemical weapons was actually a white helmet, which is funded by the U.S. government. The white helmets are funded by the U.S. government. So Jimmy on his channel has basically been pointing out and saying, where is the evidence that Assad gassed his people? And pointing out the fact that it doesn't even make any sense. Why would Assad gas his people? Because Syrian government, Assad, and the insurgents were at the point of negotiating to end the war, because Assad has already basically won the war. The Syrian government, under President Assad, has taken back much of the land that was captured by insurgents. So Jimmy, for pointing out that this is unproven speculation, and that the United States once again went in and started bombing other countries like Syria, he's painted by CNN. Let me show you one more time. It's kind of astounding that they even wrote this, but they called Dore. Ads also appeared on the Jimmy Dore Show channel, a far-left YouTube channel that peddles conspiracy theories, such as the idea that Syrian chemical weapon attacks are hoaxes. Well, once again, to this day, to this moment, 6 o'clock p.m., East Coast, I have not seen any evidence that Bashar al-Assad gassed his people, or that these were indeed chemical weapons attacks. You literally had the Defense Secretary, Mattis, saying right before they started dropping bombs on Syria, so the day before, when asked, is it Do you have definite evidence that Bashar al-Assad gassed his people? He said they didn't. So that from the day before that they didn't have the evidence to the day after, all of a sudden they have slam dunk, inconvertible proof that Assad gassed his people. By the way, the chemical weapons inspectors hadn't even gotten in to Douma before the United States dropped over 100 Tomahawk missiles on Syria. And Jimmy Dore, not just Jimmy Dore, but Jimmy and Kyle Kalinske and Lee Camp and Max Blumenthal and Rania Kalek and many, many others, including myself, we're conspiracy theories because we basically said, show us the evidence. You know, it's this old school form of journalism where you don't just regurgitate propaganda fed to you by the United States government and U.S. intelligence agencies. Instead of regurgitating propaganda, we ask for evidence. Because this is what led to the Iraq War. Dick Cheney, Richard Armitage, Donald Rumsfeld, George Tenet, and all those gang of brainiacs circling George W. Bush were basically just feeding the New York Times, feeding the Washington Post, feeding Fox News, feeding CNN with basically false intelligence. And then CNN, MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post just regurgitated it. And you have that again in 2018. We haven't learned anything. But now the new component is now they're trying to basically, it's an insult on your intelligence, really. They're trying because more and more people are starting to wake up. Independent media is exploding. Jimmy's channel is taking off, has been taking off. I think when I was at the Young Turks, Jimmy was still like 150,000 or something like that. Now it's over 300,000 subscribers. His Patreon channel is blowing up. He has sold out shows around the country, and more people are starting to tune in to people like Jimmy. I hope more and more people start to tune in to people like me as we try to launch this network, hopefully this summer. More and more people are tuning into Lee Camp. More and more people are tuning into Kyle Kalinske and Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report and Jamarl Thomas of the Progressive Soapbox and many others. So what does CNN do? Conspiracy theorists, people who don't just regurgitate the government line, people that don't just regurgitate unproven propaganda, we're now conspiracy theorists. And what was astounding to me is last week I watched an interview with Wolf Blitzer and Senator Rand Paul. And Rand Paul, I disagree with him on the majority of things, but on war, he's generally smart. And Rand Paul was basically saying everything I just said. I haven't seen any evidence that Bashar al-Assad gassed his people. If there is evidence, they haven't provided it to me, a United States senator. Why would Bashar al-Assad gas his people? He's basically won the war. And you know what Wolf Blitzer said to him? Because Wolf Blitzer, oh, bless his heart. I met him in person. He's actually a nice person, but he's a fucking stenographer for the government. Wolf Blitzer says, Senator, are you trying to say that the intelligence is flawed? Like, people at CNN and Wolf Blitzer, they think their jobs as quote-unquote journalists is simply to repeat what U.S. government sources tell them. But that's not journalism, of course. That's just kind of public relations and stenography. When you just repeat and try and dress up as news what the U.S. government tells you, you're not doing journalism because you're not actually looking at it with scrutiny. You're not investigating whether it's true. You're just regurgitating it. So Wolf Blitzer says to Rand Paul, wait a minute, Senator, are you trying to say that the intelligence might be flawed? Ding, 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 ding. And also, you know, Jimmy, God bless him. I love him. I don't agree with him on every single thing he says or everything he covers. Sure, he doesn't agree with me on every single thing I do. But it's a very dangerous territory when someone like Jimmy Dore is in CNN articles being, you know, very subtly linked in the same conversations with Alex Jones, with, quote, you know, very radical extremist conservative channels. Channels that literally come up with conspiracy theories about, you know, Sandy Hook was a hoax. And, you know, all the nonsense that Alex Jones has come out with over the last few years that is dangerous. And also, let's not forget, people like Alex Jones incite violence. They incite violence. They incite this hysteria, you know, get up in arms, get your arms. So It's very dangerous when you CNN, who, by the way, they are actually the conspiracy theorists because they are passing unproven fantasies off as news. What do you call a conspiracy theory? I call it speculated fantasy. Unverified fantasy. Well, when CNN just reports as fact Bashar al-Assad gassed his people and that there was a chemical weapons attack before the chemical weapons inspectors even got into the area where supposed chemical weapons were released, what do you call that? You call that reporting, or, let me hear it, a conspiracy theory? I call that a conspiracy theory, and I call what Jimmy is doing. Jimmy, by the way, who himself, I'm just reporting what he says. He calls himself a jack-off comedian on YouTube. Jimmy, a jack-off comedian on YouTube, is literally doing more investigation and looking with more scrutiny than a multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerate, CNN. Lee Camp doing more investigation and reporting than CNN. Kyle Kulinski, Jamarl Thomas, myself, others, looking at things more critically and investigating things more than CNN. So what's next? What's next? If I break a story, let's say on the EPA cooking up science to declare water in Flint safe, or if I break a story on a nuclear waste site endangering the lives of people in St. Louis or other places, and Bill Gates being the largest shareholder in that those nuclear waste sites, and corruption involved with that, am I going to be a conspiracy theorist because I'm reporting that the EPA is cooking up science? It seems to me CNN is now calling people who call out government lies and government corruption conspiracy theorists. Well, that's pretty damn dangerous. Not only is it intellectually dishonest, but it's dangerous because just as independent media is exploding, and by the way, of course, I'm not going to lie to you, of course, if I had my choice, I want you to subscribe to my Patreon. I want to grow my Patreon. I want to grow the funds from, as I'm concerned, I want independent media overall to keep on growing. And I hope that means Jimmy. I hope that means Jamarl Thomas. I hope that means Lee Camp. I hope that means Mike Figueredo. If I'm forgetting people, I apologize. The more, the merrier. Because I do think we're at a point now where we need the viewers to help fund real reporting and real truth. But when you have places like CNN who have this large microphone, basically, I mean, that's defamation. You don't have to be a lawyer. They defamed Jimmy Dore. And let me see if he's responded to my text. I doubt it. No, not yet. They defamed Jimmy Dore by calling him a conspiracy theorist, linking him with the likes of Alex Jones and other lunatics on the internet. They defamed him. Now, full honesty, I was away for the weekend. I didn't watch Jimmy's whole response yet because I've been busy doing a lot of things, business planning, this and that. But I know Jimmy well enough. He's not going to take that lying down. I haven't spoken with him, so I don't know what he's going to do specifically. But the bottom line is, very dangerous territory when you have an outlet like CNN, who, whether I like them or not, whether you like them or not, a lot of people read them and a lot of people watch them, lying about independent media commentators or reporters. You know what? If CNN wants to attack Jimmy on the merits, if CNN wants to write an article attacking him for his views on the TPP or attacking his views on American imperialism or whatever, criticizing him on the merits, that's fair game. Jimmy and I sure criticize CNN. If they want to do it in return, by all means. But when you lie and when you relegate people like Jimmy to conspiracy theorists, that's a different story. Then you're not actually having an intellectual debate or basically lying about them because they're kind of one of the few that are asking questions. And by the way, as the buffering happens again, by the way, Amy Goodman was the original Jimmy Dore. Amy Goodman in 2002 and 2003, she was being called a conspiracy theorist. Democracy Now! Was being called, those conspiracy theorists who are saying, where's the evidence of, yellow cake, and where's the evidence of weapons of mass destruction? Back then, there was no YouTube back then, and there was no independent media channels or anything like that. So this is not new. They've been doing this to Noam Chomsky since the dawn of time. And they also did this, the dearly departed Robert Parry. Robert Parry was the head of Consortium News. And he was reporting on a lot of things the government didn't like. And he was reporting on a lot of things that CNN didn't look into and the Washington Post wouldn't look into. And they called him a conspiracy theorist. So let me tell you something. If a conspiracy theorist, if the new definition of a conspiracy theorist is a commentator or a journalist that want evidence before the United States takes military action, which bombing other countries is military action. If that makes you a conspiracy theorist for wanting evidence, then I'm a fucking conspiracy theorist. Edit it, clip it, do whatever you want. If that makes you a conspiracy theorist, then yes, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and so is Jimmy Dore. If it makes you a conspiracy theorist to say, well, why is the United States bombing Syria when the chemical weapons inspectors haven't even gone in? If that makes you a conspiracy theorist, sign me up. I'm a conspiracy theorist. If it makes you a conspiracy theorist to point out common sense and facts, asthma attacks and other things, and that the first people that actually, now it says live stream offline. Do you see that? Okay, now I'm back. And the first people that cited chemical gas were the white helmets. If that makes me a conspiracy theorist, I'm a conspiracy theorist. If it makes you a conspiracy theorist to point out United States history, the fact that the United States has continually gone into places without any verified intelligence, that these places attacked us or bombed people, if that makes me a conspiracy theorist, then I am a conspiracy theorist. Because really, what they are trying to define as conspiracy theory, wait for it, is actually a process. It's this old process. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, called journalism. Journalism is demanding evidence. Journalism is demanding facts, a nice side of common sense, and demanding what is your evidence for war? What is your evidence for attacking another country? What is your evidence from endangering the lives of other human beings? Evidence, evidence, evidence. That's now being defined as conspiracy theory. So if I'm keeping it real, I don't know what Jimmy's going to do. I haven't spoken with him. I hope he sues the hell out of CNN. There's also the tiny little fact, CNN did not reach out to Jimmy Dore before they published this story. And as someone who's had defamation and horrible things written about me that weren't true, and when those authors didn't reach out to me to get a comment, that's kind of like what you learn in Journalism 101 class. Reach out to both sides. They didn't reach out to Jimmy. So Jimmy, if they did, would have basically told you what I'm telling you, would have told them what I'm telling you. Dude, all I'm saying is there's no evidence and the chemical weapons inspectors didn't even go in to inspect before we bombed Syria. It's outrageous. And this is a slippery slope. And don't make any mistake. What they're doing, folks, what they're doing is trying to silence the opposition. Silence anti-war voices. Silence progressive commentators. Silence progressive reporters. And we're not going to let them. So it's great to see as many people who have rallied behind Jimmy Dore. Once again, I haven't spoken with him. I'm sure I will. But I think it's ridiculous. CNN should be ashamed. And frankly, I hope Jimmy sues them. I really do. Moving on from CNN smearing Jimmy Dore to now the Democratic National Committee. Again, I was away for the weekend, so when this came out, I was away at a friend's bachelor party. The Democratic National Committee, apparently their plan for winning the midterms, their plan for taking back the White House in 2020, their plan for attracting millennials, their plan for attracting older voters who love Bernie Sanders and are disgusted with the DNC, their plan is to sue the Russian government and WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign. No, not making it up. Tom Perez at the DNC have filed a suit against the Russian government and WikiLeaks and Trump's campaign for, I don't know what. I mean, collusion, or whatever that means. Still not clear. Citing that the Russian government, once again, Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? As soon as I cover the DNC, my YouTube stream starts buffering, and my YouTube stream goes out. Isn't that interesting to you? Not saying anything, just pointing out interesting facts. I continue. So, basically, Tom Perez is, I don't know, suing the Russian government and the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks, citing collusion and hacking. Again, I've repeatedly said this. If the Trump campaign did work with the Russian government to somehow hack emails and feed them to WikiLeaks, I do think that's something that Trump should be held accountable for. That would be, you know, kind of conspiracizing with a foreign government, and that's fine. Have an investigation. We don't need to hear about that investigation 24/7. We don't need 24/7 media speculating about that investigation and what you know, drip, drip, drip in the investigation. That's all, that the DNC and Podesta's emails were hacked and then fed to WikiLeaks. And Julian Assange, even recently, has said, I have physical proof. I have physical proof that the Russian government was not my source for the Podesta or the DNC emails. So let's show you a little bit of Mr. Perez's interview on Meet the Press, giving the details on this lawsuit. I mean, you can't make this shit up.
The 2016 presidential campaign never ends, does it? It won't. Well, 2050 we'll be arguing about it. But on Friday, the Democratic National Committee filed a lawsuit against the Trump campaign, the Russian government, and WikiLeaks, alleging that they engaged in a conspiracy to sabotage Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump become president. Joining me now to discuss this development is the chair of the DNC, Tom Perez. Mr. Chairman, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back with you, Chuck.
All right, let me start with this. Why this lawsuit right now? And I ask this because the president toys with interfering with the Mueller probe, and Democrats are quick to say, let it run its course. This, to me, is a lawsuit. You're making a claim that Mueller hasn't made yet. Why not wait for the Mueller probe to end before you file your lawsuit?
Sure. Well, there are three basic reasons. Number one.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I got to interrupt right before we get to the meat of that. So Chuck Todd asks, why not wait? Why not wait? He decides to file a lawsuit. I have a question for Chuck Todd and the wider media. Why not wait for the Mueller probe to end before talking about it 24/7 for 2 years? Why not, instead of doing endless segments on Meet the Press and here we go, more buffering. Okay. Why not do actual news and wait for the investigation to end before hyperventilating? Of course, if you have investigative reporters, they could find out details of the investigation. And if they find out details of the investigation, they could report it. But that's not what you've seen in the corporate media. You've seen 24/7 hysteria and speculation without any findings of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And by the way, I'm not defending the Trump campaign. I do believe that they tried to meet with a Russian attorney and they tried to get info from Russia. But that doesn't prove some type of grander conspiracy where they, Trump campaign working with the Russian government, like hacked Podesta's emails, hacked the DNC, fed them to WikiLeaks. I haven't seen evidence of that. If that makes me a conspiracy theory, like my friend Jimmy Dore, call me a conspiracy theorist. But let's play a little bit more of Mr. Perez on the DNC's lawsuit against Russia.
Republicans are making Clinton the star of their midterm.
That's wrong. Not the right one. Here we go.
You have to file claims in a timely manner under statute of limitations. I don't know when Director Mueller's investigation is going to end, nor would I ever ask him, because I want him to do a good, thorough job. And so we need to protect our rights under the appropriate statute of limitations.
When was this going to expire? How close to this deadline are you?
Well, again, I don't know when Director Mueller is going to file his complaint or whatever action he takes.
You believe you couldn't have filed a lawsuit if you waited a couple weeks?
But we don't know when Director Mueller is going to act, and so this notion, and again, I don't want to ask him when he's going to act, and so we have to protect our rights. But secondly, we've done our homework, Chuck. A year ago, people were saying, file a lawsuit then, and I didn't do that because I believe in doing your homework, and over the course of the campaign and the Russians to basically affect our democracy. And so we did our homework, and we brought our civil case. And then finally, I'm worried about these for this dramatic and reckless and unprecedented hack because this administration is compromised. I want to make sure we send a very clear signal.
I'm curious of who you chose to include in the lawsuit. And who.
So I just want to point out, not to attack, poor old Chuck Todd here, who I do like actually criticizing, but Tom Perez said that over the last year, we've seen so much evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. And I'm not going to say Trump's nickname for Todd because I don't agree with the president making nicknames for, media people. But he's like, the question, the follow-up there, Mr. Todd, is can you cite that evidence? Can you cite the evidence you're talking about that's making you file a lawsuit against the Russian government, against WikiLeaks, against the Trump campaign? Can you tell us what exactly is the evidence, the basis for you filing this lawsuit? No, but Chuck Todd doesn't particularly ask. Doesn't particularly ask what the evidence is. Because why ask? I'm just the moderator of Meet the Press. I'm just a journalist. I don't need to ask, what is your evidence for this massive distraction of a lawsuit? Because that's what the lawsuit is. It's a distraction. And it's a distraction essentially used because the DNC has calculated if we stir up those older voters that are still still have that kind of Cold War mindset, that we're suing Russia because our democracy was attacked, even though we don't have any evidence of such, that's going to bring out more people to the polls to retake the House. That's what they're banking on. So let me continue with Mr. Perez because it just gets worse. It gets worse.
Who you didn't, you have Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone. You don't have Michael Flynn. He's somebody that's been charged. I'm curious, why is Michael Flynn not included? No Steve Bannon, no Corey Lewandowski, no Kellyanne Conway, three other people who served as sort of campaign chairs or managers, but you do have Manafort. What was the decision-making to go with who got in and who didn't?
Well, we brought a case against the people that we feel there's sufficient evidence to move forward in a civil case. That doesn't preclude us from moving to amend the case as we discover more evidence.
But you don't think there's enough evidence on Michael Flynn, huh?
Well, again, we want to make sure. I'm a big believer in making sure that I have confidence in every aspect of my case. And in the Watergate case that was brought by Larry O'Brien, former chair of the DNC, that complaint was amended over time. I am confident that we will file an amended complaint over time.
Ooh.
Did Hillary Clinton push you to do this? Was this something that she supported?
Tom, you'll have to ask Secretary.
You don't know if she's supportive of this move or not?
I have not consulted Hillary Clinton to ask her permission to file the complaint.
Sure.
The buck stops with Tom Perez. And we filed this complaint because our democracy is at risk. This was an assault on our democracy. And we have to protect that.
I spoke with a...
So, few things there. Number one, bullshit. They didn't consult with Hillary Clinton, or at least let Hillary Clinton know this was the plan. And of course, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton said, bravo, bravo, because they want to push out as much as humanly possible the narrative that she was a victim of an unprecedented cyber attack, an unprecedented attack on our holy democracy, and her loss isn't really a loss. In some way, salvage her reputation. in some way salvage her legacy. But, oh, here's the buffering again. Jesus Christ. You know, YouTube seems to be buffering a lot today. I'm going to reach out to them and try to find out what's going on. So, I don't believe that Tom Perez and the DNC didn't consult Hillary Clinton or at least give her a heads up that this was going on. And the most astounding part to me, and I'm going to play a little more, and I hope you're on a full stomach because it might make you nauseous, is when Tom Perez and the DNC chair is talking about our democracy was under attack and I'm fighting for our democracy. Let's play a little bit more and then I'll tell you how ridiculous that is.
Legal expert on my show will have to be different. So you don't believe that this is Trump's campaign manager for 2020 Democratic Party? They've sunk to a new low to raise money, referring to this criticism that you guys are just doing this to raise money.
Precise truth and to deter future behavior. We have elections coming up. They tried to interfere. They interfered in 2016. They did it with impunity, and they're trying to do it again. And we've got to deter it. This is an attack on our democracy, and we can fight for good health care, we can fight for good jobs, and we can fight to preserve our democracy. In fact, we must do that.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question that apparently came up on a conference call that you had with some state party leaders, and this was from Slate. It said, I just mentioned this to a county. This is referring to somebody, we don't know who it was on the call, but a state party official. I just mentioned this to a county chair, and her response was, how can we spend all that money? So can you address that, the financial burden that's going to be on us? I will ask you, how much money is this going to cost the DNC? How much money are you taking away from 2018 to focus on 2016 in Russia?
Chuck, we can't afford not to do this, because when you look ahead and you see what was done before and what they're trying to do again, our democracy is at stake. It's hard to win elections when you have interference in elections. We've been winning elections. We know how to walk and chew gum. We've got boots on the ground right now in Arizona. We have a great candidate. She's an undeniable underdog. We're fighting there. We just won in Wisconsin.
You didn't answer. How much money is this lawsuit going to take this year? Millions?
I don't know. I don't know the amount of money that it will take, but I'll tell you, it's hard to put a price tag on preserving democracy. And you know what? That's why I concluded that it would be irresponsible of me not to do this.
Jackie Speak.
Oh my God. I mean, where do you even start? Where do you even start with this man and this ridiculous party that's pretending to be the party of the working people, but are really trying to con the working people? And let's be clear, Republican Party, not good either. This is an endorsement of the Republican Party. I'm at the point now where I say to hell with both of them. But first of all, did you actually hear Tom Perez said, how do you win elections with interference like this? That's a good question that I think progressives want to ask Tom Perez. How do you win elections when you have interference from places like the Democratic National Committee? The buffering, here comes the buffering. Oh, sorry, we were buffering again. I'm back. Tom Perez says, how do you win elections with all this interference? Well, I asked the same question. How do progressive candidates like Bernie Sanders win elections when literally the Democratic National Committee is working overtime to, let me hear it, interfere through, I mean, every trick in the book. You had the DNC literally working on behalf of Hillary Clinton to interfere in 2016, planting negative stories with media about Bernie Sanders, trying to rig it through superdelegates. Basically, the contest was over before the first primary because all the superdelegates had basically went Hillary's way. You have on the local level, I interviewed a primary candidate in Illinois, his name was Anthony Clark. He lost the Illinois primary in the 7th District, but you have all sorts of shenanigans from the local Democratic parties to attack and interfere on behalf of establishment candidates against progressive candidates. You have David Brock and super PACs like Correct the Record on behalf of Hillary Clinton and establishment candidates sending out oodles and oodles of misinformation through their paid bots but we're so concerned about Russian bots. We're not concerned about David Brock and domestic trolls and bots that send out lies and propaganda. So for Tom Perez to be talking about how do you win elections with such interference, look in the mirror, Tom, because it's your committee, the Democratic National Committee, and the Democratic Party that has been interfering in the elections on behalf of establishment, corporate, bought-off candidates to try and suppress and defeat progressive grassroots candidates. So you are, what do they say? That's like the pot calling the kettle black. That is hypocrisy and a lack of self-awareness by Mr. Perez and the Democratic National Committee. I don't even think they know how ridiculous they sound. So on one end, you have him talking about, well, how do you win elections when Russia is interfering? Forget whether Russia interfered or not. I don't think it's to the extent that they're saying it was. I don't see evidence for that. I think it's been all a Cold War reenactment and hysteria to try and distract from the main issue that the Democratic Party and the establishment lost because more and more people are waking up to the toxic effects of bought-off politicians and money in politics. That's the real story of 2016. Obviously, Trump isn't the answer. Obviously, he conned all these people into thinking he was the answer. But literally, Tom Perez, this whole thing is a distraction. And it's also a ploy to try and win back the House of Representatives, if they can, win back the Senate, by jiggering up this like Russia-phobia and this Cold War reenactment to, midterm elections. Let's face it, the majority of people that vote in midterm elections are older voters. It's been that way for a long time. I think you're going to see a lot more younger voters this time around because there's so many progressive candidates running. But the majority are older voters. Although there are a lot of older progressives that followed Bernie Sanders and follow progressive candidates, there's also a hell of a lot of older establishment voters, and they are very dependable in midterm elections. So what Tom Perez and the DNC are trying to do with this ridiculous Russia lawsuit is basically try and stoke up, trying to poke at those older voters to come on out by any means necessary, even though we are basically putting out propaganda in a form of a lawsuit. You want to talk about interfering in elections, Tom? You got to talk about superdelegates, which are undemocratic and basically make the entire process rigged. And let's talk about your neutral DNC literally planting negative stories against Bernie Sanders, literally coming up with ways to elevate Hillary Clinton and knock down Bernie Sanders, literally setting the primary schedule to benefit Hillary Clinton by making it top-heavy with all the southern states where Hillary Clinton was going to do a lot better because of the higher African-American voting population. I mean, there's so many different ways the DNC rigged and interfered that were a lot more impactful than Russian trolls and Russian bots. Do I think it's a good thing that, Russian trolls and there were Russian bots? No, I don't. Do I think it decided the election? No, that's ridiculous. It's absurd. It insults intelligent people's intelligence. But there's another. This part you can't make up. Wait for what I'm about to show you, Tom Perez said. You ready? Okay.
Spear, Democrat from California, Claire McCaskill office. Claire McCaskill's office called it a silly distraction, the lawsuit. Jackie Spear, a Democrat who's on House Intel Committee, has seen all of this stuff, says it's ill-conceived and not in the interest of the American people. What would you tell them?
I love those two Democrats. They're great people. We're working to help reelect them, and I disagree with them for the simple reason that preserving our democracy, they were trying to bring about chaos, Chuck, and they did. We had people on my team at the DNC who got death threats. And you know what? When you try to do that to our team, yeah, I'm going to punch back. I'm punching back not only for my colleagues, I'm punching back for democracy.
Oh, boy. Let me just take off my glasses. This is a fist. This is Tom Perez's fist. And this is my face. And this is punching back. Punching back. Punching back. Punching back. Punching back. democracy. That's what that is. Because Tom Perez is literally punching out my brain cells. He's literally punching out my brain cells and my intelligence and my patience. So let's get into the obvious, folks. And whoever makes the first GIF of me punching myself in the face gets, I don't know, I'll buy you dinner or something. So wait a minute. You're punching back for democracy, Tom Perez and the DNC? Where was your fists? Where 100,000 people were purged off the voting rolls in New York? Where were your fists then? Where were your fists when there were 8 or 9 hour lines in Arizona during the primary? Where were your fists punching back for democracy when California was sending out lies to voters to confuse voters, Bernie voters specifically, to help Hillary Clinton? Where were your fists when in Iowa, the Iowa caucus was called by the corporate media when Bernie Sanders was down by less than 1/10 of a point? Where were your fists when all minorities, predominantly, were thrown off the rolls in Ohio and other places through a system called cross-check? You say you're punching back for democracy. Well, it seems your fists are only working when it favors establishment bought-off candidates. It seems like your fists are only working when it favors the establishment and the corrupt. It seems like your fists are only working when it will help put back the Democrats into the House of Representatives to maintain control, who would be the speaker? One of the most establishment corrupt politicians in the country, Nancy Pelosi. Don't tell me you're punching back for democracy. You don't give a damn about democracy, because if you did care about democracy, I promise you, you and the DNC would have been up in arms after 200,000 people were purged off the rolls in New York City. You would have been up in arms by the 10-hour lines in Arizona. But all those things benefited Hillary Clinton, so you didn't give a damn. You said something and you moved on. The DNC, with this lawsuit, is not only trying to distract the masses. They are proving why they don't know how to win elections. Because instead of focusing on real issues, like the Flint water crisis, the East Chicago lead problem, police brutality all over the country, real issues, economic inequality, the minimum wage, attacks on people trying to get a higher minimum wage, the attacks on labor unions. Instead of trying to push forward actual solutions like, dare I say, universal health care, universal basic income, which is growing more and more popular. Instead of trying to focus on issues, focusing on injustice, what are they doing? They're trying to distract the masses. They're trying to reenact the Cold War. And it's not going to work. Not going to work. Actually, it's probably going to be one of the reasons they lose. Again. So, bravo on your lawsuit. Bravo. It's based on nonsense. It's propaganda. Tom Perez, when he talks about, oh, we're punching back for democracy. No, you're punching people's intelligence. You're not punching back for democracy because you only care about quote-unquote democracy when events seem to hurt bought-off, corrupt corporate candidates. If events hurt progressive, anti-establishment candidates, oh, tough luck. But, it's totally transparent what he's trying to do. So, folks, obviously, today was a tougher live stream. Had a few other stories to cover, but we've gone a long time, and I want people to go have dinner, this and that. I also want to contact YouTube to find out what the hell is going on with my live stream. My Wi-Fi works the rest of the day. I don't think it's a Wi-Fi issue, but why is my stream constantly freezing, constantly buffering? Didn't have this problem when I was at the Young Turks. I didn't have this problem when I was at the Young Turks. So something's not clicking here. Something seems to be wrong as my channel continues to buffer and freeze and freeze. So we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to reach out to YouTube, who isn't always so great with the responses, but we'll see what's going on. What you can do, and I'm going to totally try and push it out there more. If you got the means, patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. Your contributions are going to help me get back in the field. Your contributions are going to let me and help me hire full-time help, full-time cameraman or woman who can help me with lighting, who can help me with the tech issues we're having, who can shoot me out in the field. We need the funds for that. So right now, like I said, we're almost at $2,000 a month. This is just my reporting Patreon. When you combine my book Patreon, we're at 730 paid patrons, and I believe over $5,000 a month. So we're trying to get this up as much as humanly possible, so we could get in the field, so we could get more money to travel, a budget to travel, so we could get those one-time equipment needs like cameras and other things. There's a lot to do. So this is a grassroots media revolution, and you guys are the ones that are helping me build it. So when other people say they can't do it without you, it's sometimes hot air. No, I literally cannot do this without you. Like, I cannot get in the field, I cannot get equipment, I cannot get tech support without you. So I really hope if you got the means, you could do $1 a month, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. There's different levels. You get different things. You'll get my podcast. You'll get my diaries. You'll get everything. So patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. And also, if you don't know, I've released chapter 7 of my book. That is patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports for the daily reporting. Chapter 7 is all about Standing Rock, which is obviously an issue very near and dear to my heart. If you go and become a Patreon subscriber for my book, again, same thing, $1, that's a little different. You pledge per chapter, $1, $2, $5. You'll get access to every chapter I've written so far. We have 7 chapters up, and chapter 7, all about Standing Rock, all about the rise of fascism. I give you a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of things you don't know that happened at Standing Rock. It's still very important now because we're seeing similar things that happen in Standing Rock happening in other places in the country. I hope this chapter, when you read it, it informs you enough and you find out a lot of the things you might not know, because we can't defeat fascism if we don't fully understand what's happening around us. You got to inform the masses, you got to wake up the masses for real change to happen. So thank you for watching. I'm going to see if I can figure out what the hell's going on with this buffering. Feel free, if anyone wants to put together a GIF of me punching myself, that would be fantastic. As always, Jordan Sheridan, patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports, at Twitter, at Jordan Sheridan, and I really appreciate your support. I will be back I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks.